SAGES Stories.
Welcome to today's episode of SAGES Stories, the official podcast of SAGES, the Society of American Gastrointestinal and Endoscopic Surgeons. Please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you can stay up to date with our most recent episode, and enjoy the show.
Can you believe it? We are already to episode 9 of SAGES Stories, where we shine the light on some of SAGES' most impactful leaders. I'm your co-host, Dr. Kevin L. Hayek from beautiful Cleveland, Ohio.
And I'm Dr. Shirin Tofai, joining you across the country in Los Angeles, California. We have a fantastic show in store for you today.
Yeah, specifically to our astute podcast listeners, when you find out who our guest is, you might be asking yourself, are Shirin and Kevin just finding out who Chad Ball and Amir Farouk just interviewed on Cold Steel? Or are they just slow on the invitations to these all-star guests? Well, it's the latter. I can assure you that we didn't know about the amazing episode that is literally hot off the presses out, highlighting our guest on Cold Steel.
Yeah, for sure. Our Canadian buddies on the Cold Steel podcast are pretty active, I must say. You may recall this happened to us for the first time last year. Dr. Leanne Feldman, yes, she is Canadian, and she was our SAGES president this past year. And lo and behold, it happened again this year with today's guest. And she's not even Canadian.
I mean, come on.
So we might have just have to have a little powwow with our colleagues north of the border. Hey, Kevin, what do you think about that?
That's an excellent idea. Collaboration is good for the soul.
All right, well, let's just lick our wounds and get this show on the road. Today's guest is Dr. Patricia Sylla. After moving to the United States from the Ivory Coast, Dr. Sylla received her undergraduate degree in biology from Georgetown University. She then earned her MD from the Weill Cornell Medical College. Dr. Sylla completed residency training in surgery at Columbia University Medical Center, which, note, none of these are in Canada, by the way. Subsequently, she completed 2 fellowship training programs, colon and rectal surgery at the Mount Sinai Hospital and minimally invasive surgery at Massachusetts General Hospital. Just amazing pedigree. And if that wasn't enough, after a 7-year stint at MGH Harvard Medical School, Dr. Sylla moved to New York City, where she is currently professor of surgery in the Division of Colorectal Surgery at Mount Sinai Hospital. And most notably and relevant to us, Dr. Sylla is the president-elect of SAGES, and her term will run from 2023 to 2024. Welcome to SAGES Stories, Pat.
Thank you. I'm honored to be among the greatest podcasters in the history of SAGES.
That true statement.
That's true.
It's actually a true statement. As the only podcasters, yes.
The Canadians beat you to the punch because of our little affinity for transitional surgery. You know,
I know
transitional surgery. So
but they've done it to us twice now. So it's becoming a bit of a rivalry here. But no, we're going to collaborate, and we're definitely going to link their podcast on our show notes and tweet that out as well. It was really an amazing episode. I know there'll be some overlap, but as you know, on SAGES Stories podcast, we focus a little bit less on the clinical work of our guests and really try to dig into their personal lives or professional stories and really get into their inspiring journey. So you undoubtedly are one of those leaders. And so we'd like to always start off by letting our guests tell us a little bit about themselves, where you grew up, what were some of your highlights along the journey to your current position in New York City?
Oh, okay. I'm going to try to be brief, but I
take your time. Take your time.
I grew up in Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, a small country on the west coast of Africa that used to be a French colony until the 1960s, believe it or not. 1960 was the year of the independence, which is really not that long ago when you think about it. But I grew up there. I was lucky in many ways, very privileged growing up, as my father was from the country, but my mother was actually French American. So when I went through French high school, took my baccalaureate, and actually I was supposed to go to France to do my advanced university training. And then because I'm American, there was a change in plan at the last minute to say, no, we're going to send you to the US with my mother, and her mother was in DC at the time. And so I ended up going very much reluctantly. I wanted to actually follow my boyfriend at the time in France to do my university. So I ended up actually in the U.S. in DC. Went to American University first, and then transferred to Georgetown. And so I was very lucky to get to the U.S. Obviously, at the time, I did not realize it, but it became very clear that the opportunities that I had from there on were incredible. I would have never had such opportunities either staying in Africa or, I think, in my opinion, going to Europe. I think I was very fortunate. And so from there on, I knew I wanted to be a physician. I was very interested in medicine from the beginning. So I ended up, after graduating from Georgetown, I went to Cornell in New York. I was obviously seduced by the appeal of New York City. And then I fell in love with New York City. I stayed pretty much for all my training. And I met my husband at the time. We were classmates at Cornell, but he was an MD PhD. So I had already decided to stay for him in New York to do my training, but I love New York City so much. It was really not much of a sacrifice to stay in New York to train. And then we moved to, after my fellowship in colorectal surgery, we moved to Boston, primarily because of him. Again, he was going to do his cardiology fellowship training at Brigham. So we had a stay in Boston. And I got very lucky as I did my second fellowship at MGH, and I stayed on staff for a couple of years. And then back to New York City. This is really where our heart belonged. We really wanted to come back to the city to raise our children. So we got very lucky to be able to come back.
That's
in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's an amazing journey. So this is Le Côte d'Ivoire, right? So you speak French?
Yes.
And are there other languages that are spoken in the Ivory Coast?
So the main language is French because it was a French colony, but there's probably about 200 ethnic languages being spoken because there's so many ethnical groups there. There are a couple of dominating ethnical groups, but the French really has helped because it really helped unify, people after the colonization. So French is still the national language there. So yeah, it is the first language.
One of my first friends in surgery was actually from the Côte d'Ivoire. It went during my time as a medical student. I did a rotation in Gabon, and he was one of the interns. He's back at Côte d'Ivoire, Jean Faya Yaraduno. So he had us there. So that's a little fun fact, as I met someone also from the Ivory Coast many years ago.
That's pretty cool. Kevin has a lot of African friends.
Wow.
But he doesn't introduce any of them to me.
Yeah, I introduced you to my African. I had her at a whole African event in Los Angeles. So
yeah, it was just one. We'll see.
We'll do another one. We'll keep it going.
Usually when they leave the country to go pursue education, they usually end up going to either Canada or Europe, obviously France, but other parts of Europe. They don't, unlike Nigerians or Central Africans, because of the language, they end up, they don't end up typically in the United States. So it's not that common to find Ivorians. There's not a big community.
Right.
And do you have connections with the Ivory Coast professionally now, or no?
Professionally, no. I still have obviously a lot of family. My parents actually have never left Ivory Coast. Unfortunately, my father passed away a couple of months ago. But my mother.
So sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Appreciate that. But I have obviously my entire father's family still there. So I've actually been going back and forth, to Ivory Coast a lot more often than I did before. So not professional ties, but really a lot of personal family connections, which is nice.
Well, I'll link you up with Jean at some point, because he's still there. He's still operating. He's a general surgeon there. So yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic.
So can you tell us a little bit about your family?
My family. So my husband is a scientist. He's an MD PhD. Who essentially is very focused on fat metabolism. Adipose tissue, is very involved in all that is basic science and NIH funded and doing very well. And although he's a cardiologist, he doesn't see patients that much. It's not really the basis of what he does. It's really 90% research. We have two kids, Jonah and Ariel, who are 12 and 8 years old, two boys. And that's our short,
those are beautiful names. Yeah, those are great names.
Thank you. And again, I'm very lucky to still have my mother, that I get to see more often now, obviously, that she's in Ivory Coast. And so, that's our family. And my in-laws obviously were in New Jersey, so that's helped a lot in terms of child rearing and helping us a little bit. Yeah,
And you still have the DC connection, or is that
I
your
do.
mom's back to Ivory Coast?
My grandmother on my mother's side actually has just turned 100 a couple months ago.
Oh
So,
my gosh. Wow.
you know,
Some good genes.
Dr.
but
Percy's still available.
Yeah. True story.
it's crossed my mind once or twice.
Yeah. Be pen
But
pals.
my brother also lives in DC, so it's nice.
Hmm.
I still have close friends in DC, which I love. I love DC.
Yeah, I mean, your passport pages must be so packed.
You could say that.
Yeah, it's fascinating how you were able to balance your multiple degrees, multiple institutions, a very heavy career with a husband that also has a very kind of demanding academic career, family all over the world, and children. It was very impressive. And you're so young.
Very impressive.
Yeah.
More than I look, but the I think the key has been, with my husband, we've really been fortunate in that our careers were a little sort of out of sync to some degree. So as I was building, especially my, a lot of the research and academic activities early on, he was not traveling as much. So I was able to get a lot of travel early on in my career without really having too much of an impact on family life. So that really helped. I think it's more a challenge now because he's really doing very well and giving more talks, especially internationally. So luckily the boys are starting to get older. So they're a lot more self-sufficient than when they were just 4 or 5 years old. That was more of a challenge, but now they're really growing and they're quite mature. And they're your typical New Yorkers. They know how to take care of themselves. So shockingly enough. So, but the travel is becoming more intense. Pre-COVID and now post-COVID, it's going to be more challenging to balance the academic travel. But we make it work. I think that's what we've gotten pretty good at it.
So when you moved, did you know kind of pretty early on that you wanted to just pursue medicine, or was it during undergrad? When did you make that decision?
Yeah, so I was really obsessed with biology when I was in high school. I really just loved everything science. And so I had a pretty good idea when I was going into medicine, but I didn't have any doctors in my family. My father was a business person who started a computer company in Ivory Coast. My mother is a French teacher. And so they were the first of their generation family to go to college. And so my father was really my role model, but there was really no link to medicine. It was sort of just a love of biology and the concept of taking care of people from very early on. So I when I got to the US and I go to college, I essentially knew what I wanted to do. So it became kind of, what do I do to get to medical school? I mean, I was on the path from very early on, which helped me stay very focused and overcome obstacles as quickly as possible to get to the ultimate goal. Goal-oriented. That was the mission.
And did you learn English in grade school?
Yes, so in the French system, you take English as it's a language. English is mandatory, and then you have to choose a second language. Most of us you had a choice between German and Spanish. So, but I was lucky to be able to learn English, and my mother being American and being an English teacher, obviously that helped because we did speak a fair amount of English, in a household. But it's a whole different experience when you move to the US and you think you know the language and you think you can speak, and then it just hits you that you just can't converse with the American college kids. I had to kind of learn I had to learn sort of the conversational English, the everyday language, and then that took a little bit of time. So but eventually when you're fully immersed like I was, you learn quickly. It's just you have to just completely I literally avoided all my African friends. I did not hang out with the French. I just completely immersed myself that first year of college, determined to learn English as quickly as possible. So that helped.
I'm always impressed by internationals that speak English because they speak so fluently. And I always put myself in their space saying, okay, if I were to speak Spanish or French, it would definitely not sound like their English. It's very impressive. And then after medical school, at what point did you consider surgery as a field?
So it's interesting when I grew up. I mean, if I had a couple of experiences that really struck me is we were involved in helping gather donations from the community where I grew up. to help Médecins Sans Frontières with cleft palate repair. So we were very involved in this. And so I had sort of a little bit of a ideal that I would become sort of like a facial reconstructive ENT surgeon. That was sort of like the picture I had of medicine, of surgery. So I had a vague concept for surgery, but it was really not defined. When I went to medical school, I kind of pursued that. I latched on to that concept, you know, even in first year, and that changed essentially just based on my exposure. So I thought about surgery, but it wasn't really until my third year that really became cemented.
That's the Doctors Without Borders.
Yes.
So you then did 2 fellowships, and I know that when I did that, my family was like, "Get a job already." I think I understood at the time that
They're still telling you that, Kevin.
yeah, they still are. I know, but I knew at that time that minimally invasive surgery was kind of less likely to be called a field, and more was a tool to apply to a field. And I suspect that was kind of a similar decision for you. But can you talk a little bit about, you know, the decision to kind of go down 2 fellowship pathways?
Yep. So I think when I started in residency, I was very interested in minimally invasive surgery and colorectal surgery. I think part of it was the mentorship that I received and the surgeons that I really, you know, I thought were incredible role models. I was very lucky, and I was actually part of my decision to apply and then eventually match at Columbia is I met Kenneth Ford during the interview process. And if you know anything about Ken Ford, the co-founder of SAGES, you know, this is when I got first introduced to MIS. And so I drank the laparoscopic Kool-Aid, you know, way back then. But at the same time, you know, he's a colorectal surgeon as well. I was very interested in colorectal surgery and had great mentors. You know, Larry Whalen was there. We had several surgeons who were really doing cutting edge, you know, colorectal procedures. So I wasn't really thinking about MIS versus colorectal. The whole time it was sort of like a merger between the two, plus endoscopy, obviously being also in the center. And so when it came time to decide, I was leaning more towards colorectal just because I really enjoyed all aspects of colorectal. I mean, it was especially the anorectal. You know, we kind of always joke that if you walk in a room and there's an anorectal procedure and you want to run away, colorectal is not for you, right? You know what I mean. You both know what I mean.
Oh yeah.
Yes, we do.
You know?
Yes, we
and
do.
I loved it. I loved every aspect of colorectal. And so I kind of migrated more towards colorectal, but always thinking, well, I don't have to restrict myself to colorectal. I'm going to be an MIS colorectal surgeon. So that was sort of my frame of mind. And so that's how it evolved. And then, you know, I had a great fellowship at Mount Sinai. So when I went to Mount Sinai, you know, at the time, you know, there was just not that many people doing advanced laparoscopy. And I got really lucky to be exposed to really incredible training. And the MIS piece was always there. And we did a lot of laparoscopy. But I think what really happened is when I knew I was going to move to Boston, you know, following my husband, you know, the question came up as to what now? Am I going to apply for a colorectal job? Or I'm going to apply to a general surgeon job, surgery job. So I was sort of in the process of looking for a job, and it just kind of hit me that, you know, I kind of felt, you know, what if I take the opportunity to just, you know, get to know Boston a little bit, because I had really no ties with Boston at all. It was sort of like knocking on people's doors, not really knowing the scene. Said, you know, I could take some time and actually pursue laparoscopy more seriously, and maybe I can even think of, you know, marketing myself in a way as a MIS colorectal surgeon in a more formal way. So it kind of hit me to say, you know, why don't I take a year to just, you know, get a feel for Boston, do some research. Potentially, if I'm lucky, I can find a program that does both a fellowship and some research that I was really interested in continuing, and then, you know, combine my love of laparoscopy. So that's what I kind of set out to do. And I only interviewed for, you know, to a handful of programs when I got to Boston, thinking it's either going to work or I'll just take a job as a colorectal surgeon. And I got lucky that I matched at MGH. It was exactly what I was looking for. It was just the right amount of laparoscopy, the right amount of bariatrics, not 95% bariatrics. And I knew through the mentors, and especially with David Ratner, who was my fellowship director, that I would have a chance to do laparoscopic colons and laparoscopic rectums and all the whole, you know, plethora of laparoscopic procedures. So it was just a perfect match of a program for me. And I think he felt the same way. He felt, you know, she's already trained in colorectal, she's coming to refine her skills. And so it was just a perfect match. And, you know, I got a little bit of pushback from my colorectal mentors at the time. It's really interesting that my colorectal mentors from Sinai were kind of like, what? What do you need to do this MIS stuff for? You're already well trained. And I don't think that they had that vision. I felt, well, it will make me an even more refined and sophisticated surgeon. I think laparoscopic surgery, especially suturing skills, and the work in the foregut work, I thought was another dimension to what we do in colorectal. I think it adds your skill set just is incredibly enriched. And so I felt, why not? It will make me an even better, laparoscopic surgeon. So it made sense to me, but it was interesting that at the time, very few people really got that vision. Dave Ratner was one of them. He just totally got it and was very supportive of that. And I think he brought me back in on staff afterwards. He saw the value of this dual training more than anyone else.
For our audience that may not be surgeons, colorectal involves the colon, the rectum, and the anus. And if you're the laparoscopic colorectal surgeon, you're as far away from the anus as possible in your surgery.
This is, well, actually, if you're on the robot, you're even further away.
That's right.
Exactly. So yeah.
But so what year was it you did your your MIS fellowship?
So I did my MIS fellowship 2007 to 2008.
And did you feel that at that time, the colorectal surgery fellowships were not as minimally invasively inclined and you need to do that? And do you feel the same is true now, or that to truly understand how to do really great laparoscopic suturing, for example, and get that skill under your belt, do you still recommend for most programs to have an MIS fellowship if you really want to kind of up your game?
I think I've evolved in a good way. I think at the time when I was applying, and believe me, my colorectal fellowship was very much MIS. I mean, Mount Sinai is and remains a leader in minimally invasive approach. So we were, I think, compared to other programs, we're much more advanced in terms of MIS skill training. You know, we had Barry Salke. I mean, Barry, the history of Barry Salke as well, and Dan Heron. I mean, all these people came from that tradition of MIS. But I think, when I see the trainees now and what colorectal programs offer, I think, it's also the thinking of, if you're going to be doing pure colorectal surgery, you're probably not going to require those laparoscopic skill set and the suturing skill set. So except, for example, when you're doing a laparoscopic rectopexy for rectal prolapse, these are probably the only cases where you actually are required to suture the colon to the sacrum, to fixate the rectum in place. But these days, if you look at the fellowships now, with the robot, that becomes a little bit obsolete. So with the, especially with introduction of robotic training, this is less of a priority. I think the colorectal fellowships do a very, very good job of training, our fellows in, essential advanced MIS skills, including suturing for these procedures.
And it's so interesting that Ken Ford, one of the founders of SAGES, was your mentor, and now you are the president-elect of SAGES, soon to be president. And so have you talked with him, and what is he like loving the situation? What's the story there?
Unfortunately, Ken Ford passed away a couple of, so that was really quite sad. And his wife died maybe 2 years before he did. So SAGES, actually, we had a really nice memorial video that was made by the ACS about masters in surgery that's still available. But he passed away. So unfortunately, I think he knew about my passion in SAGES, and he knew I was very active, involved in the society. So I think it gave him great pleasure, and obviously he was essential in that trajectory, because he really, as I was a first-year resident, he told me I had to join, and he brought me to my first meeting. So, but unfortunately, we lost him. It was a big loss for SAGES.
Yeah.
I think one thing that is so clear from your CV, your well-known work, just knowing all of what you've done is your passion for innovation. And you shared a very amazing story with Amir about how that innovation developed, specifically the journey of transanal total mesorectal excision, also known as TATME. Again, we'll point our listeners to that episode for a very detailed analysis of that journey. But if you were to kind of pin down one take-home point about your lessons as a surgical innovator, what would that be?
Collaboration. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that was the key. And I think also, you know, you may struggle to find collaborators within your institution. You may struggle to find collaborators even within your network, your city, or even your country. But you will find people who get excited and motivated, and will support you and see your vision and help you. So I think that was the biggest lesson for the success of TME, and it was essential for this early success. And really being implemented safely was to collaborate early with not just key leaders in the field, but you know, people who believe, who had the same, or shared the same vision of minimally invasive approaches to, for example, in this case, rectal cancer, similar to POEM. So early collaboration and building those bridges is essential. I mean, I got a lot of pushback, not so much with my institution. They were very supportive because they saw the work evolve, you know, from model, you know, swine model to, you know, I couldn't stop talking about this. They saw, you know, presentations every week. So they were completely in line with it. But when we started to branch off, you know, to other groups across the country, it was hard. It was difficult to get people to really share the vision. There were a lot of concerns. And if I'd listened to those people, even within my own society back then, it would have been potentially stalled, you know, for a long time. So I think it was really important to collaborate early with people who really believed or had the vision of this approach to get the work going.
So I want to talk a little bit about your practice too. At this point, you're a professor of surgery and renowned internationally. It's clear that you're active in research. You talked about innovation. What does a typical, and I guess I use that word somewhat facetiously, work week look like for you? Because I'm sure it's quite varied. But what's kind of the breakdown between clinical work, research, administration, travel?
Well, things are just about to get a bit more complex for me because they asked me to serve as system chief for my colorectal division. So
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. About
You didn't
Well
update that.
deserved,
Yeah,
it's not on
absolutely.
my CV yet
Not
because
on your CV yet. We're gonna add
No,
that. Jeez,
I'm still
man.
negotiating my
Wait, is
contract.
this breaking news? Did we
This
just
is
It
breaking
news
news.
world
but
breaking news?
Wow. All right.
It's hard because
Congratulations.
I'm still in that awkward phase, as you guys know, of contract, you know, finishing up contract negotiations. So which is an important part.
Sure.
So it's very exciting. But my administrative responsibilities are going to increase significantly. But before then, you know, I've been very fortunate at Mount Sinai to be able to, you know, really spend a fair amount of time on research. So I've been serving as director of clinical trials, but it's, you know, clinical trials, bringing sponsored and investigator-initiated clinical trials has been really important to me. But my typical day is I have my Monday and Wednesday, and half of my Thursdays are clinic days. And my Tuesday is my administrative day. That's my research day. And then I have my main OR day is Friday. So I really do all especially my rectal cancer, colorectal cancer cases on Fridays. And then any additional interrectal volume or benign colorectal cases will be spread out throughout the week, wherever I can get OR time. So a lot of admin time. So between the helping with the fellowship, resident training, teaching, education, and now the added responsibility of, you know, managing a very large group. We have
How large is the group?
We're 15 surgeons, 15 colorectal.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
So it's a large group. I have several sites. You know, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. These are great people. I really love the group here is really wonderful.
Well, that's great. Congratulations. That's really, really cool.
That's fantastic. So do you think with the added administrative role that you are obliged to reduce all the projects you're working on and the clinical work?
I think it's going to require some multitasking. I mean, we have built our research team over the past 7 years that I've been at Sinai. I've been growing it steadily. So we're lucky to have research fellows, we're residents, and we have other research support. So I think I'll be able to probably disseminate and, you know, spread out and delegate a fair amount because they're well trained. So reduce, I would say no, but just be more mindful of, you know, of growth of the trials enterprise, and making sure that, you know, some of my colleagues take on, you know, some of those trials and lead some of those trials on their own. So I'm excited about that. I think, you know, with good organization, we can do a lot of this within a division.
Yeah.
So we'll shift gears, talk a little bit about SAGES. You know, we're the official podcast of SAGES, and we heard that you were looped in by the late, great Ken Ford, and obviously his impact spurred you on to this journey. We also love kind of hearing about how you got involved, how you kind of progressed through leadership, and, just share a little bit about, your time at SAGES.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, like very, most people within SAGES leadership, I mean, I think my first experiences at SAGES were, being part of the committees, membership. And then the big one for me was my breakthrough membership was committee was conflict of interest.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
And to our listeners, we just got the email today about if people are interested in committees, you have an
Yes.
opportunity to put that in. So definitely do that.
I already
That was-
referred
that
to
was a
my
big-
prior fellows. Yeah.
SAGES became really my main society, where I invested, a lot of my time and effort, and I really loved the society. But it was really the opportunity to serve on these committees, and I wasn't on the colorectal committee until later. I really served on membership. I was on this. I was involved in NOSCAR very actively from the beginning. So I was also on there was an endoluminal task force that was put together early on, as sort of like another committee besides NOSCAR. And I was on the conflict of interest, which was actually a lot of work. I mean, this is when we were doing a lot of the early work on establishing a pathway to comply with this, with the ACCME and regulation, and trying to manage, our members and faculty disclosures and making sure we're compliant. So it was a lot of that compliance work. And I was on that committee for 7 years. I was a member for 2 years. Then I was co-chair for 3 years before I moved to chair position. So, in a lot of ways, I was, it's not, and this is important for people to know, you don't have to be on the most, glamorous or, sexy committee to really make an impact. And it's really the work that serves the society so important. And on the conflict, especially now, I think there's been a lot of challenges recently with the new ACCME rules, especially when it comes to any type of ownership. We have to resolve for our society to be compliant. So this was an important part of what I did early on. And then from there on, that opens new doors. You get noticed, people really like the work that you do. And I was lucky to be able to then move to the colorectal committee. I was able to be offered other great opportunities, like serving as one of the section editors, the hindguts section editor for surgical endoscopy, which was a ton of work, but a ton of fun. I loved it. This was my first serious editorial job on a surgical journal. And so that was really a wonderful and incredible learning experience. And then, other community participation and consensus development with our EAS partners, and lots of projects that really kind of led to more opportunities to do more work and have more impact on the society. So it's been a great journey. Obviously, colorectal was important. So we evolved from a colorectal task force to a colorectal committee on my watch. So that was important. And so it's been really great. And I was obviously incredibly honored to serve as program chair in 2019. And I think that was one of my biggest highlight, obviously, to be able to shape, the content of the meeting was incredible experience.
Yeah, and we love seeing everything you do at SAGES. I think last year in the kind of, I guess it's called like a fireside chat that John Mellinger had with you, really enjoyed that. It was a great part of the meeting. And, there's a lot of firsts in many respects that your story has highlighted. You may remember this year at SAGES, we had the very deeply moving and sentimental Gerald Marks lecture by K. Marie King. That was just amazing in Denver this past month. And we will make sure that's also linked to the show notes for this, because her talk, I mean, I was physically there. I hope the audio of it is equally as fascinating, because it was so impactful. And she highlighted the many firsts of Black female physicians over the years. You will be the first Black female president of SAGES, I believe. Do you bring any of that with you, and what does that mean, and how is everything that you've experienced in your life kind of will affect how you will be the new president of SAGES in a couple of years?
Well, I mean, there literally no words to describe how, incredibly, grateful I am, but it's also incredibly satisfying to know that, when you dedicate that much effort and work and passion towards, a society and the work that you do, it's it's incredibly gratifying to know that, you know, you can get to that level. I mean, there were many, you know, highlights along my SAGES journey, but especially, you know, serving as program chair, you know, being asked to serve on the board and the exec, and having, you know, firsthand being able to watch the work and shape some of that work happening on committees, and, you know, help construct the strategic plan for the society has been incredibly gratifying. So there's no question, obviously, this is the culmination of it, is serving as president is the biggest honor I've really ever had in my career. So it's been an incredible journey, and I try not to think about first as much. It gets overwhelming at times when you really think of this, and to me, it's even beyond, going beyond, you know, being the first in that respect. It's really thinking of my family and my father, and not being able to share with my father, but my father has had so many firsts as well. And so knowing, you know, all the obstacles he overcame to do what he did. And I could literally write a book about what he's done, but he was and will remain my main role model in terms of all the barriers he broke. You know, back in the day when there was just overt racism, and he married a French-American white woman as an African male, Muslim male. I can't even tell you the stories that, you know, he had, the experience that they had to go through as a couple to raise a biracial couple, biracial children. So it brings this home. It's, you know, knowing what he went through to get to, you know, to be who he was. You know, there's nothing more satisfying to know that I was able to put in the work and achieve, you know, what I consider to be the highlight of my career. And I think he would be, you know, he was already quite proud, but I wish he could witness that. It is incredible.
That's very lovely.
Yeah, I wish you could too, but we're
No.
really thrilled for that for you. And I know you got a year ahead. In the past three presidencies have kind of been off cycle a little bit with the meetings and a lot of, you know, juggling around, but I feel like we're kind of back on the traditional pathway. So you sort of have that, you know, that year back a little bit. So how are you gonna use this sort of preparatory year to get ready for 2023?
I couldn't be more excited. I mean, I think there's a lot going on with SAGES that really we're in the midst of so many really exciting things. And I think there's a lot of developments, you know, especially when it comes to education and what the committees are doing. I mean, there's a lot going on. So I think the big impact has been obviously our prior presidents have done an incredible job, you know, setting the stage, you know, for all these developments, especially when it comes to, you know, launching OWLs and the development of masters and all these initiatives going on. It's been incredible. So to spend time on the exec has been an incredible learning experience. And you spend time with Leanne and then before her, you know, Rory, before she moved on from the exec, and Horacio, and John. I mean, I can't tell you, you know, our exec meetings are just unbelievable, and the amount of work that the committees are doing just to be able to digest it all and plan for the next wave and next innovation. We can barely keep up with the number of publications being submitted, the guidelines, you know, the new ideas and fresh ideas, all the innovation happening at once is just overwhelming. But it's good training, because now it comes down to, you know, continuing the mission. You know, we have our mission is clear. We know what we want to do, but, you know, allowing, you know, room for really cutting edge innovation and making sure that we stay on point for our members and making sure we continue to deliver the highest level of quality, you know, educational materials. This is what we do, and this is what we do really well. So in a way, it's overwhelming just because of the magnitude of what it represents, but on another way, it's not so much, because the work has been already established and is well underway. And it's just our committee members. I mean, I had 3 SAGES meetings today. This is like the 4th.
Oh my God.
I'm not president yet. It is absolutely incredible.
We were trying to keep you up though for this one. We know that you may have been catching a couple Z's in the other one, but not this one.
No, definitely wide awake
and
involved
engaged. You couldn't sleep for this one. So
but no, you know what I mean. This SAGES meeting, there's nothing passive about those meetings. These are work meetings. You're just you know, scheming and planning your next move. And so it's extremely satisfying to see that amount of productivity among our membership. It's overwhelming at times.
Hey, Kevin, do you hear that? Do you?
I do. I
You-
do. I hear that. I hear
For our
that
next
sound.
segment, this is okay, Pat. You hear that music?
We are the world. We are the sages. We are the sages. Sing it, everybody. We are the ones who make you bright our day. So let's start treating.
Do you hear that?
Okay. Our Sages segment is coming up. It's the We Are the Sages segment by popular demand, especially by Dr. Archana Ramaswamy. This is her favorite part of the podcast. So, Pat, this is the We Are the Sages segment. We would love to hear your most memorable, salacious, funny Sages moment.
Oh, there are so many, but I think to me, what would I think would sum up, the joy and sometimes shocking events that
Yes.
occur at our SAGES
Yes.
meeting is when there was a group of I believe they're Japanese men.
Japanese, yeah, the
Japanese,
Japanese
yeah.
Going with this.
they're probably up for one of these Sages Stories episodes. We might have to get one of them on because
Or all
they've
of
come
them.
up, or all of them. Yes,
I remember the shock value. I had never seen anything like it, and these
yes.
showed up in their onesies,
Yes.
literally on
Yes.
stage.
With no shirt underneath
Or
or underwear underneath. Yeah, I
No,
remember that one.
or
and I think it really summarized, the incredibly important value of fun and not taking yourself too seriously, after hours, and really
Yeah.
enjoying good company and good fun and decompressing in a healthy way. It was quite enlightening. Using all at once.
I mean, the sing along, it's all about the sing along, right? The sing off.
It is. It really is. We are sages. Is really the main theme. We are the world. We are the
We are the
sages.
sages. Yes. I get emotional when we sing that.
I think we all do.
Yeah.
So Sharon knows I'm a last word freak. We usually have to have one more question, but I also wanted to highlight one really fun fact about your upcoming presidency, specifically as it relates to the location of the meeting. So as you know, SAGES 2024 is going to be in the best city in the country, which is Cleveland, Ohio. Now I know I have, yeah. So I know I have an LA and a New York City guest on, but face it, you're both really excited to come to Cleveland in 2 years, right?
Thrilled.
I love Cleveland.
So what are you most excited about for SAGES 2024 in Cleveland, Ohio? Other than you're presiding over the meeting, which we're excited for. I'm excited that you're coming to preside over a meeting in Cleveland. So
I think I'm more excited about welcoming more of the international members. I miss that. I think
yeah,
we've taken a bit of a hit over the past
That's
2 years.
nice.
It's probably going to rebound a little bit, but I would love to see more of our global group returning to present and to the stage. So that's I think this is a year where we might go back to the pre-COVID levels of international attendance.
That would be nice. Especially the Japanese.
But we have to show them a good time, Kevin. You know what I mean? So hopefully you can help.
I'll get some. Yeah, I'll help that out. I got 2 years to plan, but I'll definitely help out with that.
Yeah,
No
I get the Hard Rock, not Hard Rock, the Rock of
problem. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Like that. Yep. Okay.
We'll
You're
take you to the
hired.
Velvet Tango Room.
Yeah, exactly.
The program chair,
favorite
co-chair,
place.
but also the party, the event party.
Yes, the
planning.
social planning. Happy to help. Absolutely.
Fine.
Although there's plenty of SAGES people in Cleveland, so
This is true. So looking forward to it. Thanks for your time, Pat.
My pleasure, guys. All right. Thanks for having me.
you're welcome. That was great. And that wraps up today's episode of SAGES Stories. You can view the show notes for additional information mentioned on the show. Also, please visit sages.org for membership information and for the most recent news from our society. Follow us on Twitter at @sages_updates. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes. Tune in again next time, and remember, you can't spell minimally invasive surgery without SAGES.